This is Justin Derby of Wildcat Spread 40 bringing you my preview video for the first round of the NCAA playoffs. And this matchup is 3rd-ranked Linfield versus 20th-ranked Pacific Lutheran. Linfield went 9-0 in 2012, winning their 4th straight Northwest Conference championship. Pacific Lutheran finished 2nd in the Northwest Conference this year, having lost to Linfield 31-24 early on in the season. PLU won 6 straight games after that and come into the playoff game with a 7-2 record, which included 5-1 in conference play. For the Linfield Wildcats, their offense this season has been the most explosive I've ever seen in the 4 years that I've been following Linfield football. Going into the playoffs, Linfield averages 44.8 points and 485.8 yards of offense per game. Both were points were tops in the conference and yards were second in the conference. Linfield started out the season running the ball extremely well, but as the year went on, the injuries to Josh Hill and teams sucking up to the running game forced Linfield to throw the ball a lot more, as the team averaged 330.9 yards passing per game for the season. For Linfield, the passing attack is led by none other than quarterback Mickey Inns, who completed 60.5% of his passes for 2,526 yards, with 27 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions, giving him a quarterback rating of 154.78. Mickey Inns was especially dominant in the last 5 games of the season, where he completed around 70% of his passes with 17 touchdowns and no interceptions. Just really turned it on to finish the second half of the season. Leading the balanced receiving corps is Charlie Poppin, with a team-high 648 yards and 8 touchdowns on 40 receptions, averaging 16.2 yards per catch. Second on the team is receiver DJ Wiersma, who came on strong last 2 games of the year, with 528 yards and 7 touchdowns receiving on the season, including a team-high 46 receptions. Third banana on the Linfield Big 3 receiving corps is Lucas Jepson, who finished the season with 455 yards and 3 touchdowns on 33 receptions. The Pacific Lutheran defense, although not quite as strong statistically as last season's defense in terms of points and yards per game allowed, are one of the best defenses in the nation at forcing turnovers, having forced 33 turnovers in 9 games. Pacific Lutheran is a defense that loves to create chaos and get after people, although the last time they played Linfield, they laid off of their pressure and played a lot more coverage. If PLU tries that again, remains to be seen, but whatever they do, PLU's defense will give Linfield's offense a stiff challenge. In 2011, Pacific Lutheran's big weakness was their offense, which finished the season next to last in the conference, averaging 21 points and 325 yards of offense per game. In 2012, the biggest reason why Pacific Lutheran is in the playoffs this year and ranked in the top 20 is the dramatic improvement made on offense. A unit that averaged 33.5 points and 412 yards of offense per game for the season, both of which ranked 3rd in the Northwest Conference, behind only Linfield and Willamette. For Pacific Lutheran's offense, the strength of the team is their explosive vertical passing game, led by quarterback Richie Dalton, who completed 59.7% of his passes on the season for 2,439 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, giving him a QB rating of 149.9. Leading the receiving corps for Pacific Lutheran is a balanced corps, but the main leader of this corps is receiver Kyle Warner, who on the season had 1,059 yards and 8 touchdowns, averaging over 19 yards per reception for the season. One of the top receivers in the country, one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. Finishing off the Pacific Lutheran offense is their improved running game, which especially at the end of the season showed big strides. Brandon James led the team with 490 yards on the season, including 4 touchdowns and 5.1 yards per carry. His backup, Cody Perrin, really came on strong at the end of the season, finished with 264 yards and 4 touchdowns of 4.9 yards per carry. Third-string running back, Nico Madsen, 250 yards on the year, 5.3 yards per carry, and a team-high 6 touchdowns. And Richie Dalton, despite not producing a whole lot of rushing yards for most of the year, came on strong at the end of the year as a scrambler and finished with a team-high tying 6 touchdowns on the ground as well. Linfield's defense goes into this game clearly as one of the better defenses in the nation and easily the best one in the Northwest Conference. On the season, Linfield's defense giving up 16.2 points and 270.8 yards of offense per game, easily both tops in the conference. Early in the season, Linfield's defense gave up some points and yards to teams like Hardin-Simmons and Cal Lutheran. However, when you look at how Cal Lutheran and Hardin-Simmons finished the year on offense, easily arguably the 2 best offenses in the nation, or 2 of the top 5 offenses. However you slice it, those were some pretty elite offenses that were able to expose Linfield's D. Looking back at the Hardin-Simmons game when Linfield's defense gave up 35 points and 500-some yards of offense, I thought that Linfield had a bad day defensively. However, when Hardin-Simmons later put up 86 points and 914 yards of offense on some other team during the season, that game no longer seems like a bad defensive game by Linfield. After the first 4 games of the season, Linfield's defense went on a tear in the final 5 games of the regular season, only giving up a total of 48 points in the final 5 games. Linfield's defense not forcing turnovers quite like last 3 seasons' teams' defenses have done, but they just flat out don't give up anything unless they get put in bad field position. But if you're forced to drive the length of the field on Linfield's defense, your chances of success are very, very small. And Linfield's defense will definitely give Pacific Lutheran's offense a very stiff challenge, probably the stiffest challenge they'll face all season. Keys to the game for Linfield, one key is to get off to a fast start. When they played Pacific Lutheran earlier in the season, Linfield fell behind 21-7 like 20 seconds into the second quarter, while Linfield was able to rally the troops and come back to win in that game. Starting off slow in a playoff game is not a good recipe for continuing your season, especially for a team seeking to win a national championship. So for Linfield, starting fast is a very key issue. Another key for Linfield is to avoid the turnovers and penalties that plagued them early in the season, especially against PLU last time they played. Linfield showed in the last 5 games of the season that when they don't beat themselves with penalties and turnovers, their offensive pace and tempo will wear out everyone, as they evidenced against many teams in the second half of the season. If they're able to do the same thing to Pacific Lutheran like they did last year at Maxwell Field, the Pacific Lutheran's defense will be in for a long day, despite the fact that they're a very stellar unit. For Pacific Lutheran, starting out fast will be a key as well. Last time they started out fast, ended up losing the game, but that is not exactly a bad way to start out games. If Pacific Lutheran can get a big lead early on the road at Maxwell Field, who knows, maybe they can pull off the biggest upset of the playoffs. They certainly have the talent to do it. Another key for Pacific Lutheran is the ability to run the ball. When Pacific Lutheran faced off against Linfield earlier in the season, they had a lot of success throwing the ball early in the game, but for the course of the game, Pacific Lutheran's run game was totally shut down. They were held under 30-some yards, I believe. Just were unable to run the ball in Linfield at all. If they want to get out of Maxwell Field alive and continue to play this season, Pacific Lutheran will need to establish the running game, which they were able to do at the end of the season against some of the lesser teams on their schedule, but doing it against Linfield is another matter entirely. Another key for Pacific Lutheran is stopping Linfield's running game. While Pacific and Puget Sound had great success stopping the Linfield running game, they pretty much were going all out and letting Linfield do whatever they wanted through the air. Pacific Lutheran can afford to be more balanced and not as aggressive as those teams because they actually have the talent to match up with Linfield man-to-man. However, Pacific Lutheran needs to stop Linfield's running game because Linfield has shown in the past 4 years that if they're able to run the ball as well as throw, you don't have a chance of stopping them. Every team that has beaten Linfield in the last 4 seasons shut down Linfield's running game. Pacific Lutheran will need to do that on Saturday. This is Justin Derby of Wildcat Spread 40, and this has been my video preview for Linfield's first round playoff game against Pacific Lutheran.